Hey guys, Angus, and today I'm going to give you a full review and also an unboxing of this Lumsing digital Bluetooth scale. So this is definitely a first time for me testing this type of product, and also I was quite excited to see the results as well because currently I'm rehabbing from surgery, so I thought it would be useful to see any changes in body weight and also body mass as well. So starting off with the unboxing, the actual product itself is actually quite big. This definitely isn't a bad thing, but if you do get it in the post, it is quite heavy, so that's worth noting. And once we get it open, will be revealed with the packaging. So this digital scale is around £50 on Amazon, which is quite expensive, but it does mean that you get really good Bluetooth connectivity, and I will actually be showing my results later in this review. So the entire front of the scale is actually made of glass, so it's definitely well packaged, which is good, and it also means it will give a really stylish look as well. So of course we have the scales, and then we also have some instructions as well to help with setup. So as I said, not really much is included apart from that and the instructions. Even the instructions themselves aren't really that big, but again, that's not really a bad thing because we don't want loads and loads of hefty manuals. So this actually runs off 4 AA batteries, but these are actually provided, which is pretty useful, and there's a little sort of flap on the back which you have to push down, and then you have to take up the plastic as well to allow the batteries to actually power it up. Now, this doesn't actually turn on with a button, you actually stand on the scales and that is actually what turns it on, which is quite clever because it means it can power off when it's detecting that nothing is being weighed. And then another thing worth mentioning is that you can actually change the measurements from kilograms to pounds, but I don't really see why they don't just allow this on the app itself. So as you can see, once I put pressure on it, it allows it to detect it and we are ready to go. So one thing I actually quite like about this is that you don't actually need to pair it with this. All you need to do is turn on Bluetooth and it will detect your iPad or iDevice straight away. I actually haven't tried this with Android, but when I tried this with iOS, it seemed a little bit weird because there are about 6 different apps and it's a bit confusing which one to actually get. So one thing that confuses me every time I open the app is I get this message and I have no idea what it means, but I've never had a problem with it. The instructions recommend that you go on bathroom scale, but I recommend that you go on body fat scale because it's much better. So once you've actually entered in all your details, including height and gender, you can actually go to a sort of scale that they class as what is healthy and what isn't. So when you actually go on body fat scale, you get a different layout. It's a bit similar to this, but it allows you to measure things like muscle mass as well. So I've put the scales down and what I'm doing is actually weighing myself. And then what you do is when you stand on the scales, it will prompt a little message and it will ask if you do want to receive the data, which is nice because you don't have to mess around with pairing. It just detects the iPad straight away. Now here is actually where I came into a big problem because I tried to weigh myself and nothing would actually come through, and that is actually because I went on the first option. I didn't go on body fat scale. So it was a bit weird because the instructions recommended that I go on this one and it didn't work, so I re-downloaded the app and used it, and as you can see it's telling me that I weigh nothing, and obviously that's completely inaccurate. Also, there's another option to actually find your device, but I wouldn't recommend using this feature either because it's useless and it doesn't work. So here is actually what it looks like when you switch it around to the body fat scale option, and it's much better because we can see loads of data. Now, I'm not actually entirely sure how it actually measured this data, and honestly I don't think it's even mentioned in the instructions how it measures this, but I believe it. It's hard to tell whether it is accurate or not, but I have used other scales and my actual weight seemed accurate. So for those people that want to find out loads of data about their body, then this is great because it gives things like your BMI, your bone mass, and also muscle mass as well. So one huge problem I found with this is actually the glass picks up so much dust and dirt, and it actually means that it's really hard to maintain and clean, which is really annoying because it's a great looking device. So while this seems like a good product at first, I came across so many big problems with it, and honestly I found it disappointing. So one thing I actually would have liked is more touch sensitive buttons. There are 2 at the top and that allows you to control it, but I definitely would have preferred more. Also, the biggest problem I came across with these scales is that over time they became really inaccurate. Stepping on the scales is actually really simple. All you have to do is stand on it, make sure you're balanced, and then it will start weighing yourself automatically. It is recommended that you actually don't use socks because that way you can measure things like body mass and also bone mass. But the huge problem with that is that if you've measured yourself with body mass and that other data, it actually screws everything up as well. Firstly, I actually tested myself before, and it actually meant that I weighed 60 kilograms and then it dropped down to 59.7. So it's basically saying I've lost weight within seconds, which just makes no sense. As you can see, it prompts a message. It is simple, but then it means that it messes things up like body water and body fat. So if you actually go onto the data, it screws up the graph, and I find this really annoying and also really stupid as well. So if you go into body mass or body water, you can see that it just completely screws it up, and that will screw up your average. So overall, what have I actually got out of using these scales for over a month? And the answer is not actually that much. While I'm fine with my weight changing all over the place, and of course our weight does change because of course we do measure it at different times in the day, and there's lots of other factors as well, like whether I've eaten or not, but the app doesn't take any of this stuff into account. And once you do weigh yourself, it doesn't really give any recommendations. It just says whether you're healthy or not, and for some people that's completely useless. So here's that graph I showed you earlier. So usually I measure without socks because it gives me things like muscle mass, and then when I test it with socks on, it gives me 0 and it completely screws it up. When you tap on list, you can actually get a nicer view of all the data that you've actually measured, but again, the main problem is that I found it to be inaccurate, and I found that some days I weigh a lot more than I actually do on other days. For scales that are nearly 50 quid, this is really bad. And it means that I don't even want to use the scales anymore because I don't want to measure myself and think that it's going to be inaccurate every single time. Also, I think there are a lot of other problems, like you can't actually use the app in landscape mode, and also the app didn't work for the first time as well, which was really annoying. So overall, I'm going to give this device 2 stars out of 5. While it was quite a sophisticated product at first, and it did work quite impressively, it became inaccurate, and that just means that it completely makes the product useless. It was annoying because it was actually quite a good product at first, and it was even designed to look really nice as well. It was pretty sleek, it's not even 2 inches thick, and also it's comfortable to use as well with a nice glass panel, but again it just becomes dirty, dusty, and then in the end you kind of just want to throw it away. So to spend nearly 50 quid in this feels like a complete waste, and I just wouldn't recommend this product. Anyway, there's my full review of this product. Of course, if you did find this review helpful, then definitely be sure to leave it with a thumbs up, and thanks very much for watching.